If you have ADHD, you are 2 times more likely to suffer from anxiety linked to finances, 3 times more likely to struggle with debt, 3 times more likely to miss bill payments either occasionally or often, 3 times more likely to struggle with sticking to a budget, 4 times more likely to impulse spend. The reason you haven't had success with traditional financial advice and tools as someone with ADHD is because they were all designed for neurotypical brains. You were handed a fork and told to eat your soup only to realize that everyone else is eating a salad. Repeat after me. I'm not bad with money. I just have ADHD. Let's talk a little bit about finances and neurodiversity. I'm actually going to be breaking this topic down into 2 parts. On today's video, I want to read from this book called Keeping Finance Personal by 𝗪cie 𝗿𝗪. I'm not done with it yet. I'm a very, very slow reader. I'm not sure if I have dyslexia. I wasn't tested for it at my assessment, and I don't know if I ever will, but I read really, really slow. So I'm not done with the book yet, but I love the book so far. It's very, very easy to understand and digestible. I'm actually going to read you guys a chapter of this book, which is a part of a series I have going on my channel where I read neurodivergent-affirming type of books to you guys. The last book that I was reading from is called Divergent Mind by 𝗪cie. This one is about finances specifically, which, oh my God, you guys, I have dyscalculia. Is that how you say it? Dyscalculia. I have dyscalculia, and I'm not just saying that. It actually profoundly affects my life and is not something that you would even really be able to see. The only people that really sees my struggle with numbers and understanding, conceptualizing numbers are my teachers in the past, my family members, and also my partners. Needless to say, I have a really hard time understanding finances, conceptualizing numbers, things like that. And it really, really doesn't help when our school systems don't teach us the basics of financial literacy, financial stability, and all of that stuff. And so I just want to give you guys a really good resource to work off of if you struggle with similar things when it comes to finances. I just want to quickly mention before I get into the reading portion, there's a lot of pictures on this book to help give you visual indicators. There's even this flow chart. It's called a financial flow chart. It helps you with the executive functioning part. It helps you break down what's important and what the next steps are, of course, in a very easy, digestible way. And so far, what I really love about this book is how it's written for neurodivergent minds. Because we have very specific minds, lifestyles, ways of doing things, and ways that we struggle, especially when it comes to money. And money, even though is an objective thing, is a very personal thing, if you guys can understand. Like, everyone understands and deals with money in such different ways and comes from different circumstances. This book helps highlight the mental health factors behind finances, intersectionality, your neurotype and how that affects your money, all of that stuff. And it helps you actually give you tangible ways to manage finances in a neurodiverse, affirming way. But yes, let's get into it. All right, so if you guys already have the book with you, I'm going to be reading from page 52. It's going to be chapter 3, and it's called Live, Laugh, Lexapro. It says how to navigate the cycle of mental health and money. I've held at least one job since I was 12 because this was when my parents told me that if I wanted a cell phone, I had to pay for it myself. And I had never been more than 5 to 10 minutes late for a shift until my summer job in university. One morning, I slept in and woke up at 9:30 a.m. when I was supposed to be at work at 8:30 a.m. Of course, this resulted in a panicked frenzy with me running around trying to grab everything while frantically texting my coworkers. I prided myself on being a reliable employee, and being this late made me feel sick to my stomach. When I burst into my boss's office that morning to explain, I had barely opened my mouth before I started crying. I told him the truth of why I was late. I had started medication for anxiety, which made me groggy and drowsy and just out of it. Thankfully, I had an understanding boss who told me it was okay and that he wouldn't record me being late. He then proceeded to ask me genuine questions about how I was feeling and what type of work I felt comfortable doing that day. I was responsible for operating the forklift and telehandler, a big machine with a retractable arm that we would use to crush garbage. And my boss agreed that I could take a break from operating the machinery until I had become used to the medication. I felt seen and understood in that moment, and the pit in my stomach started to ease. In that instance, my boss made my mental health a priority, but that scenario might have played out very differently. I could have been written up for being late and forced to operate the machinery even though I was feeling out of it. I could have hurt myself or somebody else because I felt pressure to do my job. I could have been yelled at or fired. If I had been late frequently, would my boss have continued to meet me with the same amount of kindness and understanding? Mental health is often not taken seriously in the workplace, and even if it is, there are not enough systems in place to support the people struggling the most. Without these support systems, individuals deal with the inability to take mental health days, the loss of wages, and the potential difficulty landing or keeping a job. If your job is at risk, so is your income. If your income is at risk, so are your finances. If your finances are at risk, so is your mental health, and the cycle continues. The story I just told took place in 2018, but it wasn't until 2020 that I was diagnosed with ADHD, anxiety, and depression. Prior to that, I didn't understand the profound impact that my mental health had on my money. As much as we've progressed as a society, there is still a stigma around mental health and a taboo around money. Combine the two and you've got the perfect recipe for guilt, shame, and isolation. Mental health and money are interesting and complicated topics because they affect each other in many different ways. Struggling with your mental health can have negative impact on your finances, and struggling with your finances can have negative impact on your mental health. If left unaddressed, this creates a continuous negative cycle involving mental health and money. Escaping this cycle is challenging because it's hard to know what to tackle first, your mental health or your money. My answer, tackle both, and that's what I'm here to help walk you through. Let's start by talking about the impact that mental health challenges may have on your money. I'm sure that almost all of us have struggled with our mental health at some point in our life. Whether it's something you struggle with daily, periodically, or just once in a while, you know what it's like to just not feel okay. The way that your mental health impacts you will vary from person to person. It might feel like a dark cloud that won't go away, which keeps you stuck in bed, sucks all the energy and motivation right out of you. Maybe it feels more like a quiet voice that whispers negative and intrusive thoughts as you go about your day. Or perhaps it comes and goes, disappearing for months at a time, only to appear again when you least expect it. Now let's explore how your finances affect your mental health. According to a 2019 US survey on stress, financial worry was the #1 stressor across all ages, with 52% of people saying money regularly stressed them out. This isn't surprising because money affects so much of our day-to-day lives. Your financial stress shows up when you go to work and ask for a promotion. It shows up when you buy groceries and provide for your family. It shows up when you pay your bills or go to the doctor. It shows up when you go out with your friends or book a vacation with your partner. If you're worried about money, this will impact many of your daily lives. Some common ways your finances could impact your mental health include triggering feelings of anxiety or panic, constant worrying leading to difficulty sleeping, strain on relationships and social life, feelings of shame and isolation, and the inability to afford to manage mental health. When I was struggling with my debt, the weight of my guilt, shame, and stress around debt was constantly with me. It affected my confidence, my job, my mental health, and my quality of life. If you ever joked with your friend about how your student loans are making you depressed, turns out that may be true. Your financial situation can act as a catalyst for temporary or ongoing mental health struggles. Folks who are low income or experiencing poverty will likely have to navigate financial hardship in a variety of ways and are more prone to unemployment. Barriers such as difficulty accessing affordable housing and paying bills lead to increased mental health challenges, and research shows that debt depression, experiencing depressive symptoms as a result of emotional stress of debt, is a real thing. I believe that a lot of the negative emotions we feel around debt are a result of the messaging we've received as a society that debt is bad. We're told that debt is a result of poor financial management and impulsive spending, and that we need to strive to be debt-free as quickly as possible. In reality, debt is often a result of systems outside of your control, and being debt-free isn't necessarily a requirement to achieve financial security. In fact, it's almost impossible to live debt-free if you choose to go to college or buy a home. For many of you, the debt you took on was actually a helpful tool. Maybe that debt helped you get a college degree, or purchase a safe vehicle for your family, or travel and have life-changing experiences, or simply just survive. I want you to take a moment and think about how you can reframe your debt as a tool. It's easy to look at your money and feel like something is wrong with you. We've been conditioned to associate our self-worth with our net worth. When you're struggling to pay your bills or your account dips into the red, you might feel worthless. You might convince yourself that these negative emotions will go away once you pay off your debt and make more money. But achieving financial stability can take time. Here are some suggestions to get you started. 1 is to break down your goals. 2 is to start talking about money. 3 is to seek out professional support. When it comes to trying to work through the mental health challenges we just covered, many people will suffer alone or in silence because of the barriers that stop them from seeking out help or being able to accept support. The obvious barrier is cost, but another barrier is the lack of diversity that exists in the mental health professional industry. Most of the research finds that Indigenous, Alaskan, and white adults, as well as those who report 2 or more races, experience the highest rates of mental health issues and are more likely to access mental health services. However, it is noted that in some research that the cultural stigma around mental health for many Latinx, Black, and Asian communities may explain the seemingly lower rates. An important part of therapy is being able to feel heard and understood by your therapist, which becomes a challenge when your therapist has no way of relating to your experience. When I was confronted with the thought that I might have ADHD, the idea was quickly brushed off because I did so well in school. I was a smart, hardworking child, the kind of child nobody really worries about, because it was clear that I was going places. I got all A's in school, a record only tainted by 1 B in my grade 3 gym class. Not only was I doing well in school, I had a solid group of friends and was training 20 hours a week as a competitive gymnast. I was every parent's dream child, staying out of trouble, getting good grades, hanging around good people, being active, and working hard. Adults didn't have to worry about me, and that soon became the problem. Going into university, I was confident that I would excel, but my first semester was a wake-up call. At one point, I doubted my ability to keep going, but the fear of failure kept me trying. I started out the science department, and after a rough first year, I switched into kinesiology. Looking back now, I can attribute my success in college to the group of friends I made after that switch. We would meet daily to study for hours on end, quiz one another, share class notes, and cheer one another on. Even though I had a rough start to university, I ended up finding my footing and graduating with a distinction. All this to say, I was viewed as a successful person. From the outside looking in, I was doing well in all facets of my life. It wasn't until I graduated and started my own business that my success started to fall apart. Without the structure of a class schedule, accountability from my professors, and support from my friends, who had also moved on to their careers, I began to struggle. I left college without a clear idea of what I was going to do with my life and who I wanted to be. As my friends drifted apart, I had trouble making new ones. How ADHD can impact your money. I opened up a $10,000 line of credit when I was in college to help cover some of my expenses as a student. I remember thinking to myself, I'll only use like $1,000 and pay it off once I'm back at my full-time summer job. But it only took me 2 months to max out that $10,000 line of credit because I couldn't stop impulse spending. Yes, I know, I'm wondering how that was possible too. Prior to my diagnosis, my brain was feeling so out of it most of the time that I would spend money just to feel something. This line of credit was the gateway to even more spending. And before I knew it, I had a maxed out credit card, 2 lines of credit, and my student loans. This is how I ended up in $35,000 of debt. $15,000 of which was high interest. I would look at my credit card statement and not even remember half the purchases I made. It seemed like everyone around me had it all figured out, and here I was, free falling. The shame I felt followed me everywhere. When I was out for dinner with my friends, paid for my groceries, treated myself to a Starbucks, or bought another shirt that I definitely did not need, I felt so out of control. But at the same time, I didn't know how to change my money habits and behaviors. Turns out, my struggle with impulse spending and debt was not a unique one. 65% of folks with ADHD say that ADHD makes managing their money more difficult. But that's not all. If you have ADHD, you are 2 times more likely to suffer from anxiety linked to finances, 3 times more likely to struggle with debt, 3 times more likely to miss bill payments either occasionally or often, 3 times more likely to struggle with sticking to a budget, 4 times more likely to impulse spend than those who do not have ADHD. ADHD isn't confined to one area of your brain or one major impact on your life. It affects how you take in sensory information, how you think and process, and how you respond and behave. When it comes to your finances, it's going to impact how you understand, spend, and manage money. It will influence your emotions and mood, which we know both play a big role in financial decisions. Our challenges can lead to earning less and paying more than folks without ADHD. Just like every other chapter in this book, understanding how this piece of your identity impacts your money story, behaviors, and patterns is crucial for changing your situation. When I was diagnosed and started to learn more about how certain traits affected my money, I looked online to learn more. I was met with tumbleweeds, a couple YouTube videos, and vague articles, but nothing that I could really relate to. In fact, many of the articles giving advice on ADHD and money were filled with tips like, just make a budget, or stop impulse spending. Thank you, Janet. I never thought of that. Much of the advice available completely missed the mark because it suggests using systems and tools designed for and by neurotypical folks instead of actually catering to neurodivergent brains. For those of you unfamiliar with those terms, neurodivergent refers to those whose brains and cognition differs from what is considered typical by society. This can include folks who have ADHD, autism, dyscalculia, dyslexia, dyspraxia, BPD, and more. The term neurotypical describes those who display typical cognitive function. Please be aware that this language is also evolving, and new terms might be in use by the time you read this book. The day I took stimulant medication for the first time was like the day I put on glasses for the first time. I felt like Superwoman. I remember going to the gym and realizing I could actually keep track of reps. Usually I'm like 1, 2, what am I going to eat after this? 5, 6, 7, why is this person standing so close to me? 8, 9, oof, this burns. 9, 10, wait, did I count that right? But on medication, I could count without losing track and actually focus on my muscle activation. I always say that without medication, I have bees in my brain. If you also have ADHD, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, now imagine unmedicated me, the person who has bees swarming around her brain, who can't count to 10 reps without losing track, trying to sit down and manage her finances. I hope you're imagining an absolute disaster because that's what it was. I never understood just how hard it was for me until I started taking medication and experienced what it was like to have a quiet brain for once. And it wasn't until this realization that I also began to understand the profound influence that the right tools could have. If we look at the research around ADHD and money, the conclusion might be that people with ADHD are bad with money. You've probably thought that about yourself at one point in your life because you've likely struggled with finances. According to research, adults with ADHD struggle with financial decision making, which leads to earning less, amassing more debt, and having less savings, are more prone to impulsivity spending and use avoidant or spontaneous decision-making styles when shopping. Scored lower on financial competence assessment inventory, which shows they struggle to understand relevant information, a financial situation, or transaction, are more likely to have low savings, high debt, excess credit card use, rely on payday lending, and make late credit card payments, can tend to get stuck in a scarcity mindset and reject a more rigid structure surrounding money. Some folks might use impulse spending to balance that rigidity out, which could also explain the difficulty sticking to strict budgets. Ooh, yikes. That wasn't a part of the book. That was just me like laughing because she's reading me to filth. I'm not contesting that having ADHD contributes to financial challenges, but these challenges are not because people with ADHD are less smart or incapable of making good financial decisions. Symptoms such as disorganization, forgetfulness, unreliability, trouble planning, challenges with task completion, and poor time management contribute to difficulty paying bills on time, creating and sticking to a budget, managing cash flow, and maintaining good money habits. ADHD symptoms essentially increase the cost of self-control needed to perform various tasks that are necessary to maintaining good financial health. It's not that you're bad with money, but rather that you don't have the right tools to support you. If I put a bowl of soup in front of you and handed you a fork, you'd be like, "What the heck, 𝗪cie? I clearly needed a spoon." You recognize that trying to eat soup with a fork is ineffective and silly. That doesn't make the soup inedible or the fork a useless utensil. They just aren't the right fit for each other. The reason you haven't had success with traditional financial advice and tools as someone with ADHD is because they were all designed for neurotypical brains. You were handed a fork and told to eat your soup only to realize that everyone else is eating a salad. The key to managing money as a neurodivergent person is to find the method and techniques that work for your brain. Medication was one tool for me, but so was creating an engaging budgeting system, learning how to inject dopamine into my money goals, and understanding what type of motivation works for me. Accept that it may take time to find what works and that doing things differently is not a bad thing. Repeat after me. I'm not bad with money. I just have ADHD. All right, so I read some of my favorite bits so far from this book, Keeping Finance Personal by 𝗪cie 𝗿𝗵. If you guys are interested in entering the discussion about how neurodiversity and finances intersect and interplay with each other, head on over to my deep dive video. I usually do this when I have so much I want to say on the things that I just read, but I don't want to mesh it with the reading part because sometimes people just want to hear me read. But if not, thank you guys for watching today's video and listening along, and thank you for supporting another neurodivergent creator if you guys go and purchase her book. I will see you guys on next week's video. Bye.